YouTube, good morning. Yes, I've mentioned it before. I'm a Newcastle fan. I know, I know, I know. But I also support England. England is also a team that it's dear to my heart because, a lot of my family's from England and I love supporting the team. And let's face it, Newcastle fans, we were never going to win anything anyway before the Saudi takeover. So England was our only hope of actually seeing a team that we support lift a trophy, which is what made the penalty defeat in the Euros so much harder. Yeah, Mark is also an England fan, and he's also going to talk about how he feels about international football, how he feels about the England team. So yeah, if you enjoy this video, please like, share, subscribe, and all those good things. And yeah, enjoy the video. There was anything for me, I had England because, in all honesty, Newcastle were never reaching a cup final unless we got very lucky. We were never getting into Europe. We're never winning the league. So the closest I had to celebrating anything in football was England. And it made the defeat in the final of the Euros all that more painful. And I don't think you and I have ever actually spoken about that.
It's the sort of it was to Italy, and then Italy went and won everything else.
Yeah, but England, dude, England.
England.
For me in that final, what cost us, unfortunately, was your boys, was Rashford and Sancho. I'm not even gonna. Okay, Sancho obviously at the time wasn't a United player, so I mean we can't say that. But now we're looking back at it. They missed the penalties, but it's not their fault. How do you
Yeah,
should bring someone on
England.
in extra time in a final to take a penalty
No,
after not even
just
getting
no,
proper touches of the ball? Just wasn't going to
no.
happen.
100% manager's fault. You pre-rehearse, you pre-plan, and every player needs to know that what the order is in relation to the other players on the field.
For sure.
If you're going to make that kind of sub, you make that kind of sub with at least 15 minutes. That last half of extra time, give the guy some legs. Let him touch the ball. Let him feel the surface. Let him actually play in the
100%.
game.
Get used to it. And you know what? Case in point, West Ham against Man United. Mark Noble missed his penalty. Came on
Yeah,
to shoot the penalty against De Gea.
yeah.
Missed it. It wasn't that it was particularly a bad penalty, but when you hit a
Just
penalty that is in a nice saving range, it's like that mid range that all keepers love. All keepers love to dive left or right for
it's
that type of height.
50-50. Go the right
Exactly.
way and you're good. Yeah.
If you are not warm, if you are not, I'm going to say pitch fit. I'm going to just make up that term. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
If you're not warm in the heat of the game, you're not going to hit that thing along the ground. You're not going to hit it into on. You're not going to hit the postage stamp. It's going to go that height because your legs are probably not ready to do anything else.
I mean,
You know what I mean?
even on the mental side, De Gea and a couple of the United players were pointing where he was going to hit the ball before he took that penalty. Like, oh, you're going to hit that corner, and then sure enough, he hit it exactly there. And you think this guy
Exactly.
hasn't yet had a chance to bump shoulders and to push a couple of guys and to chirp a
Yeah, to
few
get up to
comments
the
through
with
it.
the pace of the
Mm.
game. And that's exactly what happened with Rashford and Sancho. They weren't in the pace of the game. So how are they going to take a penalty? Not to
But
mention the
also,
pressure of a final.
forget any penalty. England in a penalty shootout in the final of anything.
It's
The
just it's
worst,
just I
the worst
think I
combination.
think yeah, we did knock the hoodoo, so to speak, when we beat Colombia in the World Cup on penalties. So it felt like, okay, we beat this thing about we shitted in penalty shootouts. But
No,
if
never.
historically out of 10 penalty shootouts you've won 1 out of 10, you're still pretty bad at them.
Yes. And if every player who missed a penalty for England at a critical moment has had their entire England playing career ruined, and oh, we won one isn't going to fix that.
Yeah, exactly.
You just, yeah, worst
So what
nation at penalty taking, barring
it's just
maybe
it's
one
just
or
the
two others.
worst. I
But
think I think England is probably the worst nation with the worst mentality when it comes to penalty shootouts, because there's always that thing about we are shit at it. It's like you don't just take the penalty and be like, okay, it's literally me. hitting a ball into a net and there's one oak in front of me. Like they don't think of it that way. There's all this, oh God, now they're thinking of missing penalties against Germany. We're thinking of this, we're thinking of the media, we're thinking of all this shit. That's why I think it
Yes.
gets to the England team more than it gets to any other team, actually.
I'd love to know how much training they do. I mean, we've been told in the past about the German squad. I mean, they're leaning into that stereotype by having training sessions with extremely high pressure, with
I
ice
don't
buckets
personally
dumped on
buy.
heads you miss. And put pressure on the guy artificially, whatever you can. Make the guy practice, make him sweat.
Well,
You
that's
know,
what I was going
you
to say. That's going to say you can't simulate the pressure of taking a penalty in training against the well, you can't simulate the pressure in training compared to when you're on the pitch in front of firstly 40,000 fans screaming, depending on what side you're kicking at, they might be screaming all kinds of F's and Jeffers at you. And your
that's
mother's
on
probably.
your home team.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just your fans. Your mother would have been called 1,000 things before you probably even stepped up to take that penalty.
Yep.
Whereas in training, you can hit that thing blindfolded and hit it every time.
I think some teams try. Some guys put a lot of effort in there, but they're sports psychologists and they make as best a situation and make it as hard as possible. And they train these guys into actually how to block out and how to ignore and how to calm and how to breathe and how to just get yourself mentally set. And
Yeah.
one thing we know about football players, they're the softest people in the world when it comes to their mental game. It's a real problem with our sport compared to others. These guys can tend to be a little bit soft, a little bit weak, and they need runs and they need pressure and all the right balance and they need the confidence in the managers. Other sports tend to get on with it a bit more. So why not, if you know that, especially with your key players, the guy you need to hit the ball in the back of the net every time and you can do it in training, why not help him? You've got enough money. You're paying these guys enough. Spend a little bit, give them the coaching, get them a little bit
Yeah,
better prepared.
give them the mental, give them the I was going to say mental coaching, but give them the encouragement that they need. Harry
I
Redknapp
think
said
mental
it
coaching.
that well, exactly mental coaching, but Harry Redknapp
Yeah.
said it a while ago. He said he always got more out of putting his arm around a player instead of kicking his ass, basically. So, and I think today's footballers, to your point, are a little bit softer mentally because I think they grow up in a different surroundings. In Alan Shearer and Roy Keane's day, if you were a junior, if you were in the academy, you were in the first team's changing room, cleaning the boots, cleaning the toilets. You were getting pissed, farted, shitted on, beaten. You like it was horrible, but it toughened them up.
Yeah,
Whereas now,
we've
footballers, 13-year-olds will have agents. Their parents won't want them abused at the club. They won't, and which is correct.
I
I
get
mean,
not wanting
it's
to be abused is fair enough, but I think you hit on the word, that agent word.
yeah,
Agents these days, they're treating these kids as business business ventures on their side, and they're doing anything to keep that business asset of theirs as well
hundred
protected, but not
percent.
necessarily good for the sport and good for the kids' long-term career. They're looking for that first sign-on bonus.
Yeah, it's not good for the kids' mental health as well. But like Redknapp was saying, and then coming back to England players, give him all the attention and all the love and cuddles he needs, as long as he can fucking hit a
Yeah.
penalty.
But just make this guy do some breathing exercises. Just get him
Yeah,
some method of coping
and
with that pressure.
calm.
But the thing is, that with England in particular in a final, the nerves are going to be high anyway. What are the
Yeah,
chances of this thing going to penalties? The best times pretty high.
probably at kickoff, you're saying this thing is probably at least a 40% chance of going to penalties.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You are. I get every single time. My least favorite thing in the world is watching England take penalties,
What
unless
were
it's
you
against
gonna
Germany.
say? Yeah, of course. Well, then it's just excitement all
It's
around for you.
hilarious.
Um,
Hilarious.
what were you gonna say about England? And you feel like international football is detrimental to club football
Hmm.
or something like
I'm
that?
thinking. So Arsene Wenger's recently just proposed this whole silly 2-year World Cup story, and you
So
look at
World
this.
Cup
Just
every 2 years.
yeah, And that just got me thinking. You look at this particular last round of internationals that have just been gone, and there's a whole lot of Brazilian players that are unable to play. That clubs have had to get chartered flights to get them out there so they can get their quarantine, but they're not available for this weekend. Liverpool's without. I think it's Allison. Someone was out. There's a bunch of players not able to play. Varane is injured, and you think, oh, that's typical of the international
Varane,
teams.
yeah, and Maguire.
And Maguire, exactly. So now, I hate the fact you have to rely on Maguire. All right, it's 8 o'clock. The international guys get they get called up, they go play, and they're used and abused. There's no long term. They don't pay their wages. They don't pay their medical bills, and they don't care if they sit on the sidelines for 6 weeks after doing their international duty. And it's something that's been a real frustration, particularly as a United fan growing up, watching Beckham right when this Premier League is looking pretty set. Oh, Beckham's gone injured playing for England. He's broke his toe or whatever. The next injury comes along. I'm hugely anti-international football because it's a football break that I don't want to watch. Games I don't care about. I won't name any small, Eastern European nations playing against, other small Eastern European nation. I don't even know where they are on a map, without consulting, the old atlas. I'm not interested. And whereas right now we're about to start what is the most exciting period of the Premier League as a United perspective. This is the make or break section, and you think, let's get on with that. Let's do more of that.
Okay, then let me ask you this: do you like the World Cup and do you like the Euros?
I like the World Cup, yes. Euros less so. The Euros it's entirely dependent on the draw and the particular tournament. They're not always exciting.
Fair enough, but you'd watch it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd watch those.
So then, how do teams qualify for those international tournaments if they don't play international football during these international breaks?
I mean, I'm not saying get rid of them completely. Obviously, you can't sacrifice the national game. And then there's the other argument that FIFA donates money and it does a lot of grassroots. And I'm not interested in FIFA from a financial perspective after the recent corruption, but they do good, and there is some value to it. And I do obviously enjoy, once every 4 years, the biggest spectacle. But my problem is this. I think it actually boils down to the same one that everyone's talking about. The calendars are so compacted, and there's so much to go in there. So this international breaks are getting shoved in.
Yeah,
and I feel like that they're not prioritized, and then set aside, and then everyone knows when they are, and they can sort of work around them, kind of thing. They're sort of like shoehorned in, and I really do feel that shoehorning in. You've got your extremely busy club, calendar, and particularly if you're in multiple tournaments.
If you're in Champions League and cups, etc. Yeah.
Yes. And now you've got to shoehorn in international, and it really just part of the problem is it doesn't compete. So qualifying for Euros,
it does feel like a bit of a hack. Like international football, like an international football break, just feels like a hack. It's just like
it's a holiday and a training camp for half the most players actually, and for big teams with large percentages of their squads being international duty. It's the worst thing. In some ways, that's a good leveler in that it keeps the big teams honest against the little teams. And if you've got the money, then you should have squad depth, and you should be able to compensate for that.
But well, you say that, but let's look at the Premier League now, for example. Watford had 18 of their 25 man squad off on international duty. Obviously, not playing for the biggest countries in the world, but they have such a diverse squad in terms of nationalities, and all these oaks are going to go play international football, and they're coming back tired. And now Watford are not exactly pushing for the title at the moment. A better example is actually Brighton. Brighton have got quite a few players off on international duty, again, for like your smaller nations or your medium nations. Apart from Leandro Trossard, who's playing for Belgium, and that's, Belgium are currently top of the FIFA rankings. But my point is that they are currently fourth in the Premier League. an international break is probably the last thing they wanted.
No, they don't want tired, potentially injured, carrying a niggle here and there players, just as they're about to go and face their next game, which is critical. Because at this point in the Premier League, every game.
When you're up there, every game is critical, completely.
Yeah, so I feel very sorry for those sorts of teams.
I'm just happy that I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm just happy as a Newcastle fan. I have hardly any of my players play international football.